Today I've become a twitcher in the hope that I might get to see Ireland's first ever brown booby. How you doing, folks? Welcome again to Wildlife Wednesday. I'm not a twitcher, but, and it's a big but, I have on a couple of occasions become a twitcher for a day. And in recent days, on hearing about the sighting of a brown booby in Greystones, County Wicklow, I decided to drop down to Greystones and check it out for myself. After all, Greystones is only about half an hour's drive from my home here in Tallaght. So despite the fact that it was raining and the forecast wasn't great for the rest of the day, I decided to chance it, so off I went. I mean, when would I ever get another opportunity to photograph a brown booby? I had heard reports on social media, in the newspapers, and even on the main news bulletins on RTE that a strange visitor from the tropical waters of the North Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean had decided to check out the hospitality available along the east coast of Ireland. This is the first ever record of a brown booby on the island of Ireland, although there have been occasional sightings off the coast in recent years. His arrival in Greystones sparked a flurry of activity around the area, with large numbers of birders and photographers and curious onlookers flocking to the harbour and the nearby beaches to get a close-up view of this strange visitor. He had certainly captured the imagination of the Irish public, who were turning out in large numbers in the hope of seeing this tame and apparently friendly bird. I say tame and friendly because a piece of video used on the news, which also appeared in many of the social media posts, was filmed by a 7-year-old girl on a mobile phone. I can think of very few other birds she could have gotten this close to without frightening them away. I know Greystones reasonably well. It has a golf club that I'm quite partial to, but I wasn't sure exactly where the bird was to be found. So I decided to head for the harbour, as the reports I heard put it somewhere in that general vicinity. I pulled into the harbour car park but saw no obvious activity, so I drove out again and instinctively drove down one of the side streets which I figured would be a good place to park and to continue my search on foot. I parked in the last space on the right-hand side of the road, outside the Garda station, which turned out to be ideal because about 70 or 80 yards ahead, I saw a guy on his phone beside a wall with his camera and tripod beside him. So I approached him and asked if he had seen the booby. And believe it or not, the bird was on the beach just below the wall, about 50 or 60 yards away. So down the steps to the beach I went. There were at least 30 people, mostly with cameras, around the bird, which was nonchalantly sitting and looking about as if there was no one around. He appeared to be in good condition when you take into consideration the fact that he would have flown at least 4,000 or 5,000 miles, depending on where he came from to get to the beach at Greystones. Apparently, in the 24 hours or so before I arrived on the scene, he had been flying out to sea to fish and back again on a regular basis, occasionally landing on rocks just offshore, but on most occasions returning to the beach. So to all intents and purposes, he appeared to be in good shape. During the time I was there, he flew further south along the beach, and always keeping close to the shoreline, he landed about half a mile from where I had first seen him. Naturally enough, many of the onlookers, including myself, followed him. As I said earlier, this was probably a once-in-a-lifetime encounter. At this point, he tucked his head in and appeared to be sleeping, while everyone just waited at a reasonably safe distance so as not to disturb him and to see what might happen next. He did wake up and fly about 100 yards back to the north and land on the beach again, having made another attempt to fish first. I'm unsure if he did actually catch something. Unfortunately, at this point, I had to leave and head home. But later that evening, I got a call to say that he had been taken away by wardens from National Parks and Wildlife Service. And when he was examined, it was found that he was exhausted and suffering from malnutrition. So hopefully, under the watchful eye and tender care of the National Parks and Wildlife Service, Kildare Animal Foundation and a local vet, he will make a full recovery and in the not too distant future return to full health and may be released back into the wild. Sadly, after I wrote the last sentence and before I uploaded this episode of Wildlife Wednesday, and despite the best efforts of all those involved in the attempt to save him, the brown booby died. This was mainly due to the fact that he had lost so much body weight, was totally exhausted, and failed to adapt to the colder Irish climate. So to conclude today's episode of Why I Became a Twitcher for the day, I hope you'll enjoy this little slideshow in memory of Ireland's first ever record of a brown booby. Well, thanks again for watching Wildlife Wednesday, folks. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and if you did, I'd be grateful if you'd give it a like and subscribe to my channel. When you do, don't forget to ring the bell so that you're notified every time I upload new content. Till next week, stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands and continue to maintain social distancing. We're not out of the woods yet. Take care, folks. Bye.